Hey, everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ podcast. On this episode, we welcome back Jethro Bovingdon. And today we're talking about a new show that's coming up called Sports and Exotics that Jethro is hosting. And it's a publication that Hemmings used to have, and we're bringing it back in a video form. And not only is it going to be fun, but we have the perfect host to do it. Because not only is Jethro one of the most accomplished journalists out there, but the guy knows how to properly wheel a sports and exotics car. So, dude, how you doing today, man?
I'm feeling the pressure now.
I know. I put it on purposely.
I'm feeling good. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this series is great because I obviously grew up in the UK. I didn't know the magazine as it was back in the day. But this series and this era of car and the idea of, I guess, reevaluating cars that have become iconic performance cars is right up my street because I hate it. I love reading about old cars, but I have a pet hate, which is if you're just going to regurgitate what you've read 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 15 years ago, whenever it is, I have no interest. Like, I don't want to hear the cliches. I want to know, how does it actually stack up now with the benefit of hindsight? You have to do it with everything you've been informed about. So we're driving some pretty cool stuff. We're going to drive them properly, and we're going to not do it through rose tinted glasses. I think that's the point.
When you're talking about driving these cars, give us an idea of what cars you're going to drive in the vintage. Are these 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s cars, or is it a combination?
Yeah, we're pinging around a bit, but it is probably more modern than the stuff you would normally drive. But yeah, we've got everything. So we've got R32 Skyline GTR, Porsche 964 RS, because I think it's quite a cool story trying to figure out why everyone's backdating and changing 964s when maybe they should just be polishing what's already there. Ferrari 512 TR, which is just, I've never driven one.
Love it. You're going to love it.
Yeah, I'm deeply excited about that. A really early Viper, which is exciting, terrifying, and comedic all at the same time.
Yeah.
Pantera, also never driven one of those. So we've got an early Pantera, so I'm looking forward to that. And then we're just trying to figure this out, but hopefully we might even do a video on my Porsche 996 because everyone keeps asking me to do it and it's a different take. But I think we can crowbar it into this series.
I think you should do it as a 996 owner. I want to see that. Okay. And I happen to love that car. So I think that's a must. So dude, when you're doing these things and you're going back and you're driving these kind of, I mean, they are vintage now, right? They're 20, 30 years old, you know? Yeah. Are you doing it from the standpoint of what's it like to meet your heroes type of thing? Or are you setting your expectations back in, say, if it's a 1994 or 95 car, are you setting your expectations in 1995, or are you comparing them to what they are today or what they could be today?
I don't think you need to compare them to the modern stuff in terms of pace and performance, but what I think is timeless about any car is the dynamics, how it makes you feel, the noise, the handling balance, because even things move on, progression, grip,
of course,
amount of contact patch the tires have, how powerful the brakes are, etc. But I think the very best cars are timeless. And when I just want to go in and find out what they're like. I don't have there's not many cars I completely hero worship. Do you know what I mean? So, and I've been lucky that I've driven a lot of the stuff. So I don't go in. I go in excited to find out what they're about, rather than thinking they're a hero car and that I need to bow down at the altar of whatever this car's reputation is. So really, I just want to go in and find out if they're fun. Like, it's as simple as that, really. Are they fun? Yeah. And are they fun because they're really, really good in certain ways? Are they fun? I'm sorry, my watch is are they fun because they're really good in certain ways, or are they fun because they're slightly bad and it's comedy? Yeah. Because cars change. They do change slightly in the way you evaluate them, because when they're brand new, you can't help but benchmark them against the competition, and you think of them as maybe this is your only fun car, it's your dynamic car, and you want to get the best out of it. But as cars get older and they become maybe part of 2 or 3 car garage, the Viper's probably the best example. Dynamically, I know it's not the greatest thing in the world. Let's put it that way.
We've driven them. We get it.
Yeah, but you go in, you enjoy different things about them. And some of that might be the look and the feel, just the fact they're completely unique. They're a moment in time. So yeah, I don't want to go in with any preconceptions. And I just want to find out if I enjoy them. And it's that. And these cars, some of the cars really are totally revered. And we need to find out if they're worthy of that or if they're not.
Well, that's interesting because like I've driven cars where people have been like, this thing is amazing, you're gonna love it. And I got out of them and I'm like, this is kind of garbage, guys. Like this isn't, you know.
I mean, I find a lot of the older stuff is interesting and you can get the vibe of why people really like them, but very often I think it's only the really, really good stuff that tends to hold up, as in you jump in it and you actually become, rather than driving around problems or whatever, you're just immersed in like, okay, I'm just going to drive it and enjoy it and get stuck into this car. And I think that is quite rare. So I'm expecting, I don't know quite what I'm expecting. If I was going to isolate the ones I think you could do that too and would feel really timeless, then I think the Skyline would be in there, because I think we're not going to drive a super standard car, because it's the only car I think it's almost pointless driving a standard car.
You're right. You kind of have to modify it.
Yeah, it's almost the rules. And I did think about, I'll search the bloody planet for a standard R32 Skyline. But then I thought, well, it's not really the culture. And I think the story of that car is the culture of the tuning as well. So we wanted to find like a mid-level one. We didn't want a 1,000 horsepower lunatic one that you can't actually enjoy unless you're on a drag strip. So we wanted to find like a middle of the road one. In terms of mods, but I think that will feel like that is a pretty cool car just to get stuck in, and it's in that lovely era where cars were fast, they had decent brakes, you can get for them, but they're not so over the top with assistance and weight and size that they're becoming too big to enjoy. So I expect that's great. I think the 964 RS will be really interesting. That could be pretty mega. I've driven one briefly, but not much. And so I'm quite intrigued about that. And the 512 TR, I've got no idea about. I know it's got a fantastic engine, but and I know it looks about the coolest thing on the planet, but I don't know quite where my enjoyment level will be. I don't know if dynamically it will be good or if it's just the event of the car that will make it fun.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. It was a couple of years ago. I was so close to buying, I think it was an 87 Testarossa, just a straight Testarossa.
Yeah.
And it was a high mileage car, but it was solid, every service record on the planet. And I drove it for a solid hour and a half. Right. And I was shocked because I thought it was going to be this thing that was made out of balsa wood that you couldn't really have fun with. And it was going to feel fragile. And I thoroughly enjoyed the car. And I think going back to your point, are you going to take it on a racetrack? No, you're not. Right? Is it capable? It was back in the day, but you got immersed in that no power steering and manual brakes and this visceral 12-cylinder sound that was behind you and the gated click of the shifter. And while I'll say it's not a fabulous car, my God, when I got out of it, I was like, oh my God, like I get it. I just, and then you look at it and you're like, oh my God, it's the best thing ever,
I mean, I've driven the Lamborghini equivalent several times, and I think they are more what you expect in terms of they're pretty uncompromising. They're quite hard to drive. But when you get going on them, they're really good fun. They're actually really good fun. But they're more of that race car feel. Whereas everything I hear about Testarossa 512 is a bit more GT sports rather than like
it's a bit more gentleman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But they're gorgeous. They're so good. And I've read for years about that flat 12 engine. And I just want to drive
it. I'm really curious to hear your feedback on that because I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I mean, when it came time to deal time, the owner just went to the stratosphere with the price. And I was like, okay, no, but it's still on my radar that I just want one because it's such an icon to me. And, and I also, and I don't know how you are, but I still fall into, I love cars with that analog feel. I love knowing that the whole thing is a mechanical experience as opposed to one that's taken over by electronics. I mean, do you find, like, as an enthusiast, as a journalist, as a driver, do you prefer the older cars, the more analog feeling cars, to the newer cars with all the electronic and aids, or?
It depends. It's so difficult to generalize, actually. I find I love analog cars. You know, if I was going to say my ultimate racetrack, no, you know, no, just to go out and enjoy yourself, I'd
Yeah.
probably choose a high power Caterham 7, like because they don't do anything for you. You know,
Right.
everything you do, everything you touch, every input you make is absolutely translated perfectly, and there's no filter, which is, and
Right.
they're so much fun. But I wouldn't like to say that all the modern stuff has lost the plot, because some of it is really, really good. Like if you drive a modern McLaren 765 LT, apart from being like a spaceship, literally like so fast, it's
Yeah.
obscene. You don't feel like there's a lot of electronic, you feel electronic management in some ways, but once you start tweaking, you know, you can really dial the
Yeah.
control and stuff way out. You can turn it off completely if you want. Then they feel raw and exciting and light. It's, the problem is we're now tipping over into that EV and hybrid world, where
Right.
even Ferrari 296 GTB, which is a mega car, the latest sort of baby Ferrari, if you like, but it's
Yeah.
800 horsepower or something. They're just getting heavy. You know, they're 1,800 kilos,
Yeah.
whereas they used to be 1250, 1350. You know, so
Right.
you definitely feel that. But if I had to say it, my preference would be towards the analog feel.
Mhm.
I would not generalize, because that's part of what this series is about. I
Yeah.
hate generalizing about like new stuff's all crap because it's big and it's got electronics. Where you drive certain cars like that Ferrari 296, it's mega, and you put someone in who thinks they want, let's say a Lamborghini Countach, they think they want that. You put them in that, and they'll be like, bloody hell, it doesn't feel very fast until you're at 7.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
I can't. The steering's so heavy at low speed, it sucks. At high speed, I don't have confidence that if anything happened, I'll be able to correct it. The
Yeah.
brakes don't really work. It all looks amazing, but then if
Yeah.
you put in a new Huracan STO, it's everything they dream that car is, but
Yeah.
actually made. It doesn't have the evocative look. It's a cool thing in its own right, but it doesn't have that look and what they think they want. But actually, it would probably blow their minds because it's louder, faster, much more intense in every
Yeah.
way. You just have to find what you like, where you can find it, if you see what I mean. I
Yeah.
don't like the generalization, and I think that's part of what we want to tap into in this show. The sort of reverse of it is like, just because it's old doesn't mean it's good. And that's another one of my pet peeves. You know, I read people get a chance to drive whatever car it is, say an old Lamborghini, and it's like
Yeah.
they've had it for 15, 20 years, so they just say it's amazing. You think, come on, like, give me some detail, give me some actual gritty detail of why you like this car, other than you think you should say you like it. And I think that's
Right.
what we want to try and do. We want to get to the bottom of it, and that means driving the cars pretty quick if we can.
Mhm.
We're not probably going to be on racetracks, but I think we're going to drive them enthusiastically. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and yeah, just find out what's the truth. That's really what I'm hoping we can do.
I think that's what the people who view this show are really going to tune into, is that there are so many, and we all have done it, right? We've all gone back, we've read the old magazine articles to get an idea of what the cars were like. But when you actually get a chance as an enthusiast and as a journalist to kind of put your ass in the seat and experience it, it does trigger a whole bunch of different things. You're like, oh, well, okay. Is it like, I remember the first time I drove like a Buick Grand National, right? A Buick Grand National in the muscle car scene was, turbocharged V6. It was this giant killer. It's big. I mean, yeah, they're quick, but like they don't turn, they don't go around a corner. They'll never do that. And even the GNX, which is, again, this relatively fast car, is still at day's end, it's just okay. It's not better than okay. And I remember filming a video on that and saying that, and people were like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I think I kind of do. I don't know
Yeah.
if you do, because I think people get so swept up in the romance of those certain vehicles because they want to believe that they're so wonderful, as opposed to, back to your point, saying, well, you know what, this aspect of the car is wonderful. And it piqued an emotion in me that said, I'm really enjoying this part of it, right? Whether it has to do with a blow off valve or turbo line or this or that or the other part, or even if the brakes are garbage, but it's still kind of fun trying to wheel this thing, down from speed. I think there are so many different aspects that if you can talk about them truthfully, it gives the viewer and the reader a different perspective, and it kind of opens their eyes as to what they're getting into.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who I still consume a lot of car media, because I love cars and I just want to know about stuff. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we don't, the frustrations I sometimes feel that we don't replicate that. I want to hear and feel what these things are all about. And and there's, I don't know, I think something like an E30 M3 BMW that everyone says is the greatest car in the world, like ever, ever, ever. I've driven them. When you are really, really going, they're great. They're pretty amazing things. But a lot of the time they feel slow and very ordinary. And the other thing is that the common misconception, if you like, is, well, they haven't got much grip, so you can slide around at low speed. And it's not true in any way, because they have a pretty decent chassis. They have no torque whatsoever. So actually, if you get those things moving around, you are moving, like you are really moving, because you're not able to just, like with let's think of a modern car like a AMG Merc or something. You can make them go sideways at 20 miles an hour because they've got so much power and torque,
right?
Over and above the amount of grip they've got. But in one of those old Beamers, you can't just poke the power and get the thing sideways like an old muscle car. You're doing it at the absolute limit of what the car can do. But this idea that it's a great car, like I say, when you're really going for it, but you have to know what you're doing, because this idea of like, oh, low speed sideways fun, it's not true, because maybe in the wet you're going a bit slow, but in the dry you're absolutely at the limit of what the car can do. You're not just playing with it on the power. It's critical, is what I'm saying. So you get to that point, it's a critical moment. So I just want to get into some of that with these cars as well and find out what they're about.
See, that's for me as an enthusiast to hear what you're going to say and how you drive these cars. That's super exciting, because I mean, as well as I do, especially when you're driving, vehicles that aren't yours. And, there comes that point where it's like, I don't want to crush an owner, and I don't want to crush their dreams about what their car is. But in the same token, I do want to be truthful and I do want to be honest. So there is a line that you somewhat have to walk, right? Unless you tell the owner flat out, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. It is what it is. I hope you don't get annoyed. And that might go both ways. It might be a spectacular thing, and it might be something that's a little off, right?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to do, but I for example, is the Pantera going to be absolutely crap? I don't know, because I've never been around. I don't know anything about it. I mean, I'm genuinely intrigued about that car.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun one to find out. But the Viper, for example, the Viper owner, who's actually a photographer I've worked with in the past, guy called Mark Rickman, he does a load of stuff for Top Gear in the UK. He's a great guy. And I called him about it. He's like, we can do something. And I was like, what's it like? And he's like, oh, it's terrible. One of the worst things I've ever done. So that one is not so bad. Like he loves it. He loves certain things about it, but he recognizes the flaws as well. And I think that's a good lesson for any owner of any car. And I do it the same. My Porsche, I know what's great about it and I know what's awful about it. My old City, I know what I love about it. I know what's terrible about it.
Yeah.
You don't have to worship something in order to enjoy it. You can accept it. You can go, this is my thing. I love it for these reasons, and I understand why you might not like it for another bunch of reasons. But you can still get that enjoyment out of it. So I don't want to be crucifying any cars, but I do want to be finding out what they're about. And trying to report that as I find, I guess.
No, I think that's great. I think that's something the audience is going to look forward to. I know it's something that I'm looking forward to. I know we just pretty much wrapped our show, which is Tested. And Tested, we're doing essentially the same thing, but for muscle cars. But the cars that we're doing are 100% stock muscle cars. And, from the muscle car side, everything from, the late 60s up until kind of the mid 70s, you had the same basic formula, right? You had, mid-size intermediate sedan or coupe, the biggest V8 they could drop in, paired to either a 3-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic or 4-speed manual. And going through the different cars that we shot, it was a lot. It was interesting because like we shot an amazing 69 Camaro Z28 with a 302 in it. Not a big horsepower car, under 300 horsepower, under 300 pound-feet of torque, but God, it screamed 6,000 RPM red line. It was one of those cars that I think was a misunderstood car. That was basically, it was developed for the Trans Am series back in the day. And everybody was like, it's not that fast. It's not that this. It was the Miata of the muscle car era, right? It was take that sucker, rev it to $6,000 in every gear, throw it through a corner. And for the time, it was a lot of fun. And it was an absolute hoot to drive. It was one of those things where you go, oh, I get it now. I get it. Like, was it good? No. Is it fun? Is it endearing? Is it something that I would own? Probably, because it triggered those little fun things for what it was, and not
when you find a car that's trodden a different path and come up with a formula that maybe no one else has thought of as well. That's pretty cool. My V8 experience is obviously tiny compared to yours, but when I think of if I was going to build like a Cobra or a Ford GT or something, I would want a smaller, revier V8. I love that. Like, I love those.
Oh yeah.
Proper little revers, 289 or whatever, 302. That would be the route I'd go down rather than a big block, I think.
Yeah, big block cars are fun. Like I've got, like my Charger's an old big block, it's an old 440 big block. And that instantaneous 500-pound-foot of it's almost like I hate to say it's almost like an EV. People are going to be like, you know what you're talking about. But you get a big double pumper on there, you slap open the mechanical secondaries. I got news, those tires are going up in flames.
Yeah.
And it's just, they're not fast, but my God, they will. Think of it like an AMG. What you had said about you want to skip the back out, you're doing 6 miles an hour, you hit the gas, you're going sideways.
Yeah.
And it is a blunt force instrument that does nothing well, right? But if you bought one back in the day, you knew that. You knew where its flaws was, and you knew you were going to giggle. Where like a very good friend of mine recently picked up I think it's a 65 at 289 slab side Cobra, an original Cobra. That thing is an absolute hoot because it does rev and it is light and it does handle. And it's an amazing timepiece for the era that shows that sports cars, when done right, even with V8s in them, were magical machines.
Yeah, we only have to look at the results. They kicked everything's ass over in Europe for a time. So yeah.
So it's interesting. So I mean, with the shows with muscle and with sports and exotics, it's going to be interesting. What I'd like to do eventually is when you're over here in the States, I need to get you behind the wheel of some old school American stuff. If anything, and you're going to think it's all garbage because most of it is, but you're going to laugh. And I do want
to do that. And I love, like you say, that instant response you get from a big V8 is pretty cool. That just like, when you touch the throttle, it's like, wow, it's just, straight away. And I love that lumpy big block idle as well. I think that's cool. Yeah, I would love to do that.
We got, have you driven any like real old school hot rods, like 30s hot rods, like T-buckets with, no. Okay. So that's,
no.
All right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to develop another show for Hemmings, and it's going to be Jethro drives whatever Musto puts him in. And that will be fun because like, I would love to put you in something with like, an old school Hemi with like a 671 blower on it, on a chassis that's made of, balsa wood. That, because they're horrible and terrifying, and in the same token, you'll drive it one time and you'll think it's the greatest thing you've ever driven.
Yeah.
Right.
How do people not die in these things?
A lot do. Make no mistake. I mean, you can't. I've driven so many of these cars where when you get in them and you look around and you're going, I might not make it out, because if anything goes wrong,
yeah,
you finished. There is everything in that car was literally designed to impale you on impact or sever a limb or do something like that. And yet in this, it's like, dude, it's the same thing about riding a motorcycle, right? You know that if you're going to swing a leg over a bike, at some point, you're going to fall off.
Yeah.
And odds are it's really going to hurt. With an old hot rod, it's kind of the same thing. You know at some point something is going to let you down. If you crash, it's going to hurt because that's what they are. But there is an amazing reward out of, and it's hard to explain, out of driving these cars, and especially if if you're running on something with these little pizza cutter tires and you throw it into a turn and you're making this thing slide in a four-wheel drift and you're going, oh, if I hit something, this is going to end badly.
Yeah.
But there's that excitement. There's that theater that goes along with them that just makes you giggle. And it's just, I don't know if it's the same as sliding a McLaren around a corner, because that's not my wheelhouse. But doing it in an old school 60-year-old muscle car or an old T-bucket hot rod or something like that, where it's just so mechanical and everything is shaking and rattling, and you know that the only thing that's stopping you from hitting something is you not running out of talent at that point.
Yeah. I guess when you were talking about technology earlier, I love working out cars. That's my thing. So working out how they drive. So that, I think I'd enjoy what you're talking about, because I just love getting in a car, getting to know it, and then figuring out, okay, what do I need to do in order to make this car perform at its highest level, basically. So and that could be anything from a modern GTR type thing where you're really having to think about how does the four-wheel drive work, and what's it going to do if I do this, back to something much more old school, that's got less grip and is terrible traction or whatever. But I love that about cars, because it's sort of endlessly fascinating, because every single car is different. Even if they're similar configuration or whatever, there'll always be something different about how they're set up, what tires they're on, whatever it is, the philosophy of whoever set the car up in the first place. So for me, I think driving some of that old stuff and figuring out if I can actually make a difference and make it go the way it should go would be quite a cool exercise, actually.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do that. I'm gonna have to get you over here and shoehorn you into some stuff that I think your first impression is gonna be like, I don't want to drive this. But it is.
I'm up for it. I'm going to be out more anyway. I'm going to come out. We're going to shoot 3 or 4 episodes in the US of this series anyway. So we've got Ferrari lined up, Pantera, 964 RS. So yeah, we're going to be on a trip to the West Coast in the next few weeks. So hopefully everything will come together and we can meet up as well.
Absolutely. Well, if you're going to be on the West Coast, if you're going to be, I don't know whether you're going to be Northern California or Southern California, but
yeah,
you're going to be SoCal.
I'll be coming into LA. Yeah.
Okay. So when you're here, tell me. I'll take my old Charger. I'll drive it down to LA and throw you the keys, and you could go up in the canyons in an old big block, and giggle and be terrified at the same time. But it would be fun, and we'll slap a couple of cameras on it just for shits and giggles. And
great final journey.
We'll do that as the capper to your trip. I think that'll be fun.
Okay, I'm in definitely.
All right, good. Well, dude, we know it's a little late in the UK. We're not going to keep you, but we did want you to come on and talk about sports and exotics, and that show is coming up along with Tested Muscle, fourth quarter, for Hemmings, which is going to be great. We're looking forward to that. Otherwise, man, anything? What do you got coming up on the horizon, just for you personally?
I am. What have I got coming up? I've just picked up a new Porsche GT3 RS, the brand new one, super aero. Talking about technical, that would be interesting, because that's sort of, it's trying to bridge the gap, because it's still got a normally aspirated engine, revs to 9,000, but it's hooked up to like super sophisticated chassis where you can adjust all the compression and rebound from the steering wheel, and you can play with the diff. Plus, it's got PDK, obviously, so dual clutch gearbox. So I'm excited to see if that actually works on the road, because I'm driving it on the road rather than the track. Other than that, just normal stuff coming through. I'm still trying to figure out how to get my old crappy Maserati Quattroporte back from LA to the UK potentially. So And yeah, just trying to get myself into as much stuff as possible. It's normally I spend my days trying to get into as many cars as possible.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing, right? We're super fortunate as far as that goes. Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, dude, thank you for coming on the podcast again. Where can everybody follow you also? That's the other part. What are your social handles?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram on @Jethro Bovingdon, which is pretty easy. Same on what used to be Twitter and is now X, although I'm not really using that very much anymore. It's a weird situation going on over there, isn't it? So yeah, Instagram probably the main one, @Jethro Bovingdon.
Okay, very, very cool. Well, dude, we're looking forward to the show. Can't wait till it debuts. Listeners, obviously, will keep you posted as to when Sports and Exotics and Muscle comes out. So stay tuned for that. Also, go to the Hemmings YouTube channel and just hit that like and subscribe button now. This way, when they do come out, it'll pop you a warning. You'll know, and you won't miss anything. Jethro, sir, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Good to speak to you as always.
Always. And yeah, when you're in LA, we're going to throw you in something with an old school big block that's going to terrify you. And yeah, looking forward to that.
For sure.
All right, good. All right, man. Be well.
Cheers, Mike. See you soon.
Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.